primary policy of the GNU is neoliberal capitalism, there's no way in which it's going to improve the lives of the people. It's going to still regurgitate on the same step until the ANC is incapacitated to respond and fully be trusted by the people of this country. It is therefore categorically clear that the GNU will sustain the status quo, and the GNU, it's a political choice, it's an ideological choice of the neoliberal group inside our movement, and it was not a collective decision. COSATU and the SACP did not agree to this. No one should impose this thing on us. We never agreed to this. If we say we never agreed to this, it doesn't mean that we do not say the GNU is a reality. These are two different things, but we never agreed to this.
Greetings, everyone. Hope you are fine. I hope you are doing well. I just want to begin by saying I've come to realize that the unity of Africans is impossible, or it might be impossible, not to discourage many of you. Why I say this is because we always keep on disagreeing. We always keep on disagreeing because we are loyal to all these alliances. We are loyal to all these friendships and many other things. I think we have MK, we have EFF. Here is SACP. And we have other unions that are representing workers. Why can't these people come together and say, let's take power? Because based on the numbers, these people have that ability to take power and lead South Africans towards a better direction. I'm not like, for an example, like maybe hating on GNU. But I don't like GNU for the fact that we think like that associating with white people is the only way to solve our problems. And I disagree with that. The reason I disagree with that is because I disagree with that based on history. This is me disagreeing on this whole thing based on history. Why? Because if you look at, like, for an example, transatlantic slave trade, you look at like during the times of King Leopold II, apartheid system, you look at Berlin Conference and all these other things, then you can tell that Europeans have never had interest in Africa. Europeans have never had interest in Africa. So in other words, you should never expect a solution from these European countries, from Western countries, and from like white people, to be exact. Here in Africa, in other countries, maybe they can like develop their countries because they live in those countries. But in Africa, you cannot expect other people from other races to become your Messiah. To become your Messiah. But now we are divided. We are divided. And in other words, if we are divided, there's no way we can become powerful because there's power in unity. I'm not saying this because I'm against other races. I'm not against other races. In other words, whatever they do, they have to be successful in whatever they are doing. But they should not try by all means to become successful or to become effective at the expense of Africans. In other words, when they develop their own things, their economies are fair and square with justice, following right procedures, it's fine. If you look at Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and all these other countries, there's a problem. The reason they chased out France is because France has never had interest in those countries. If you go to those countries right now, they are still underdeveloped. Yet France has been there for a long period of time. What does this mean? It means you should never expect a solution from the Europeans. Why? Because based on history, this is a fact, it's not an opinion. Based on these facts, upon history, they've never had interest upon Africans. They've never had interest upon Africans. This is a fact, and we have to believe it. And the only thing that these people should do, is to come together. They have to bring these people together. Because right now, someone who is like me and you cannot do anything to bring these people together. Why? Because people have been programmed already to be loyal to the leaders. In other words, you cannot express yourself to the fullest. Why? Because now you have to be loyal to this institution. You have to be loyal to this church. You have to be loyal. In other words, politics right now are like a church. Are like a church. Why? Because if you go to a church, then maybe you slightly disagree based on maybe how this verse is being interpreted. Then there's a split. Then when you think now it's like we are together with a certain group, then they'll come and say, no, we disagree here. And then when you analyze this thing, then you can tell that this is not a big issue. This is the minor issue. Then there's a split. Same applies to politics. Just because I want to be a leader, then there's a split. Just because I'm offended because I didn't get a position to become maybe a general secretary, to become maybe a president of this political party, then there's a split. I joined the political party yesterday. Then today I want to become, like, for an example, one of the leaders in that particular political party. Then I feel like I'm being ignored because I don't have patience. Then there's a split. The very same thing that is happening in politics is happening in churches. And all these institutions have programmed the society to think in a certain way. This is something which is very important that people should understand. I'm not against a certain group of people, but here is the thing. We cannot expect a solution to come from those people. For an example, if you look at apartheid system, this apartheid system was created by a man, if I'm not mistaken, is Verwoerd. Verwoerd created this system of apartheid. Why? He cared about themselves. That is why even today, this man Verwoerd is still a hero of many white people in South Africa. So if these people consider Verwoerd their hero, then it means you cannot expect anything from them. That is why the moment you talk about the serious needs of black people, the serious needs of African people, they become salty. This is a problem that we have right now. These guys, they have power. These guys, these leaders, the likes of Mapaila, they have power. The likes of Julius Malema, they have power. They can come together. In other words, the leaders of all these workers' unions, they can also come together and say, you know what, let's take power, because they can convince their people. But the problem is there's a lot of split. So when you go to social media, then you can tell that no, it's impossible for black people to be united. It's impossible. You can tell that, okay, now it's impossible, because if you go to maybe a platform of DA, a social media platform of DA and AfriForum, you will never You will never hear a white person criticizing Groenewald or a DA member criticizing a Groenewald. If you go to, like for an example, FF Plus, you will never hear someone criticizing John Steenhuisen or criticizing Helen Zille, criticizing the leaders of the DA. You'll never hear that. You'll never hear it. Why? Because these people, they know very well that they are solid like this. Maybe on paper, on record, we have FF Plus, we have DA, but in reality, they are like this. So when it comes to decision making, they know very well they have to come together when it comes to decision making. But when you go to these platforms, MK platform, like for an example, even just a neutral political platform that consists of a lot of black people, then the moment someone leaves a post, then you'll start seeing people disagreeing one another. Then you ask yourself why this post has like 2,000 comments. You think everything is interesting. The moment you start reading those comments, group of black people disagreeing one another. And that's a sign that it's impossible for one political party beside ANC to rule South Africa. It's impossible. That if we have a long term, like maybe 100 years or 200 years, maybe it can be possible. But there's a high probability that it's impossible, even in 200 years. If it doesn't work now, it's impossible in 200 years. It's impossible in 300 years. Because whenever you go through these social media platforms and you start listening why these people are disagreeing, they disagree based on opinions, things that don't exist. So if these guys agree on the issue of the land, if they agree on the issue of the land, then it's final. So all these other things should not even be considered, should not even be included that much, not because they are not important, not because they are not vital. But here is the thing that we need to understand. Here is the thing that we need to consider. If we agree that Africa was taken from black people, if we agree on that, then that's good. Then that's good. But what makes us to split, what makes us to disagree with each other so much, even with a high level of hatred towards each other, is because of these minor issues. It's because of these minor issues, to the point whereby you end up thinking that the very same system that oppressed your forefathers over 400 years, over 500 years, can deliver you.
Two of us, your federation and the Communist Party, never agreed to this. We are dealing with it as a reality now. Of course, we are having an alliance meeting to sort out this particular problem. It is in this regard, Comrade Chairperson, that South Africa, if we don't resolve this problem of the GNU quite soon, we will now join the international crisis of wealth capitalism, in which when the wealth capitalist system is disintegrating, we are the ones that are coming to rebuild it when it is disintegrating. Even the capitalist powers that introduced neoliberalism in the 70s, the USA and America, they have long forgotten this thing. They are building public entities. During COVID-19, all of them relied on government, and they began to see the importance of rebuilding the capacity of the state. Here, the neoliberal addicts, they even forced government to sign pacts to borrow money from the World Bank as a political choice, not because we needed that money. I told Comrade Enoch about this thing, but he didn't care. because we needed to have gone on the books that South Africa has also borrowed money from the IMF. So it was a political choice still. So the crisis of international capitalism, that is also the crisis of bourgeois democracy, which is also in South Africa, that is capitalist democracy. It's a crisis that we must deepen, but not enter into it.
I just want to talk about this thing of like communism, socialism, totalitarianism, democracy, and all these other things. These systems are the systems that came with the Europeans. But the reason we are so attached to all these things, these systems, socialism, is because we want to sound politically correct. In other words, we want to sound educated. I'm not saying we cannot mention these things, but these are the things that divide us. These are the things that divide us. In other words, if I'm a socialist, my friend is a capitalist, and the other one is a communist, then we start, like, for an example, disagreeing to one another. Because now we cannot come together. We cannot solve the problems of our people because of I'm a socialist. The other one is a communist. The other one is a capitalist. We can't come together. We are already divided. But if we look into these systems, they were developed by the Europeans. Can the Europeans develop a system that will develop Africans or empower Africans? Whenever they develop the systems, even when it comes to economy, they develop the economic systems that will empower them. That is why even now there are people who are like apartheid was better. Yes, it's a system that was created for them, for a certain group of people. For a certain group of people. In other words, solving a problem of 5 people is different from solving a problem of 1,000 people. So they only care about themselves, 5 people, and everything seemed to be okay. The only thing that these people should do is to come together, because people look after these leaders. So as an ordinary citizen, it becomes very difficult to impossible to convince these people just to come together. Just to come together to say, ANC member, come here. EFF member, come here. Let's talk about our issues. How can we solve our safety issues in our communities? How can we develop businesses in our communities without fighting against one another? Because this division makes it impossible, not even difficult, impossible for Africans to become the owners of the land, for Africans to be empowered. It becomes impossible.
Crisis of liberal democracy. I mean, the liberal democracy, it is the one that is attacking the people of Palestine, a genocide that is supported by weapons and everything else on a single day by the Americans. The war in Ukraine is a continuation of the same crisis of bourgeois democracy, liberal democracy today. So we have to debate this question of the failure of liberal democracy, because we're taught that liberal democracy is the best option of democracy in the world. At the same time, comrades, there are forces that are rebuilding, and BRICS, where South Africa is participating, is part of that. They are building a new multipolar world system out of this unipolar, wherein one hegemonic force, the USA and its European powers through NATO, are controlling the world. Now we're imagining a multipolar world system. That is why the war in Ukraine, it's an imperialist war against Russia. And Russia has to win this war by all means possible. The reversal is too much for the people of the South, as well as for now a full-blown attack on China if Russia is never victorious in this war. That's how critical the world is today. We are actually led by fools. The Joe Bidens of this world.
We are not only led by fools, because fools should not even know what they are doing. But we are led by people who know what they are doing.